I am Jay Horton. I make movies that make money, and this is how. This is my live stream. So, look, guys, I haven't done one of these live streams in quite a while. Hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, I was having trouble with another connection. It is fine. Haven't done one of these live streams in a little while. I get a little, honestly, for how much like public facing stuff I do, I get really nervous doing live streams. So any questions or interaction, that kind of stuff is always very helpful for these things. So I say a lot that, I make movies that make money, or, I make my living off the exhibition of my feature films. And I don't take for hire work or anything like that. I don't have a day job. And I realized, I've been saying this so much that it almost sounds like a flex. And I don't mean it to be like that. I mean, honestly, one of the main reasons that I don't have a day job and I don't do for hire work is I honestly kind of suck at it. I am not good at working for people. Like I always was, if you want to use the word destined to be my own boss, because I pretty much just can't work for anybody else. So, and luckily I have, figured out ways to make my living, solely as a, entrepreneur, filmmaker. So, that's all pretty. One second. Oh, thank you, Gerard. How do you? Oh, yeah. That's how you do it. You've been at 43 years old. Oh, that's really cool, man. I started doing these filmmaking things back in 2000, I want to say 19. I did it. I started right before the pandemic. And I really, at first it was just a way, honestly, to build my brand, to try to get more people to watch my movies. And what I had to talk about was filmmaking stuff. It's all I knew, and I, had a pretty good background in distribution and marketing. So I started talking about that. And as I started getting feedback on the videos and people, like yourself, saying, hey, I was inspired. I put my first movie out, or, there's a filmmaker that had made several movies and they were just kind of wasting away on YouTube. And he saw one of my videos on Film Hub and he started putting them up on Film Hub. And, this guy made a lot of money off those movies and then is making new ones. And, he's making more money than me. I mean, he's making, $100,000 a quarter on his movies now, and was inspired to start by my channel. So like, that was really cool. And, that is why, I, continue to make those videos. I'd kind of taken a little break from it, but I'm back on it now, So, for anybody that doesn't know me, and I'm going to get to everyone's questions, don't worry. But I want to give just a little bit of background on, who I am and what I do. I'm a filmmaker. I've been making, low budget films since 2003. I shot my first feature, Rise of the Undead, that summer. It came out in 2005. Moved to LA. And it was distributed. We made the movie for like $4 or $5 grand, I think. Just money that we had saved up from credit cards, and I was working at Starbucks at the time. But one thing that I want people to, or other filmmakers to understand is, you don't have to come from connections or money to make your way as a filmmaker, to make your living as a filmmaker. I am from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I, grew up in a trailer park. I think we moved into our first house when I was like 12, maybe. And, it was a very modest house. We were like poor, or, lower middle class, if you want to say, but no money, no connections. I was a single mom. I worked minimum wage jobs after high school, ended up going to college, and, paid for that all with money I had saved up working offshore for a couple of years, year and a half. And then, a part-time job at Starbucks, so like I did not come from money. I didn't have money, and I had no connections, but I was able to make my way, and other people can too. So I'll do a quick question here. How long after the first 90 days, how long after the first 90 days should you continue to promote and market your indie film? That's from Kalu Records. Well, that is a good question. And honestly, it never ends. My whole like 90 days or essential thing is like I promote pretty much every day for my film for its first 90 days, like every day, and like hardcore promotion, multiple promotions, and then after that I do kind of slow down a little bit. After that I probably do, maybe a couple times a week for the first year, and then after that it kind of goes into a rotation with my other library, and I probably get to, I have 80 titles now, so I probably go through that in a month and a half, maybe 2 months. So, but it never stops. You always promote it, and certain movies have, seasonal time frames, like they do better this time of year, that time of year. So, when that time of year comes rolling around, you might promote that movie hard again. Or, sometimes old movies get picked up by new platforms and you'll, promote it then. But like I said, basically promotion never ends. I have movies that I made. My first movie I made back in 2003, and I still promote it from time to time. You know, so it never ends. Dominique St. Clair says, I'm trying to learn how to market my films so I can make more money with my films. So yeah. Marketing. And look, I'm going to say something that I'm a little hesitant to say, because, I have a YouTube channel that's, based on learning how to market and distribute. And in saying this, I am not saying that marketing is not important. It is super important. You should watch those videos. You should learn how to market. You should market your film. But a lot of it, if the material is good, and I'm not talking about technically good, I'm saying if your movie fits an audience's need, if you have art that that signifies that, and a trailer that signifies that, like the movies can find their audiences sometimes without marketing. I just did a video I put on my channel a couple of days ago called I made $20,000 on my no budget indie documentary. And that documentary is my most financially successful documentary this year by far. And I didn't market it hardly at all. I mean, like at all. I think I did a post or two on Facebook for it, and it made that money. And, some might say I was just an algorithm fluke or whatever, but you can say what you will about the documentary. It was a Bigfoot documentary called Bigfoot Beyond the Legend, and it served the audience's need. There's an audience for general, like, information about Bigfoot, like a starter documentary for people that might be interested in Bigfoot, and it was genuine, and people resonated with people, and it did really well. So yes, you do need to learn marketing, but it's like sometimes like the right project, the right time, it can do it for you. Waffle Iron Maiden, nice. How many films would you recommend having out to make a living from streaming? I've only got 2 features released, most revenue from Tubi, but have plans to ramp up a lot more at a low cost. That's a good question. And honestly, so I make my living as a filmmaker, right? And I have 80 films in my library, so yeah, I make a pretty good living off that collectively, but it's not, like 1 or 2 movies doing it. Although that said, probably 70-80% of my yearly income comes from, maybe half a dozen of those. And usually most of those are new releases or movies that were released that year. Honestly, it just depends, man. There are filmmakers out there, like I just mentioned earlier, a filmmaker watching this channel, and he had a movie just make like 100K in a month. So if that movie never made another dime, he could pretty much live for the year off that movie, off that month, and that's one movie. So it depends on the movie. Like the documentaries that I do, if you were to actually take all 50 or 60 of them, and, average them out, how much they're all making a month. I mean, the mean average would probably be a few $100s a month, maybe. There's some that are making, 5 or 10 a month. Then there's others that are making thousands a month. It just depends. There's no general answer to that question. It depends. It depends on the type of films you're making, the level you're making them at, and the people that are watching them. Like the cat I was talking about, they make I think they make like 3, maybe 4 movies a year, and they do really, really, really well. And there's other filmmakers, in that genre that are doing, 2 movies a year and doing well. I personally, in order to, stay at the level that I am, financially, I try to make 10 documentaries a year, that I can put out. I try to go not too much lower than that. And then I do, one narrative feature, which is more my passion. And I do that once every, year and a half. I did Craving in April of 22 was when we shot it. And then we shot A Hard Place in February of 23. And, I'm making plans for the follow-up for A Hard Place in 2025, hopefully first quarter of 25. That's still coming together. I'm working actually with other producers on that, and it's kind of on their timetable. Watch several of your videos and have docs on there, but I'm only making a few $100s at the moment. I just finished my feature film buying time. Yeah, it's like I said, man, a lot of movies do make that little. Some make more, some make less. I have several that are making less than that. So it's not a bad start, is what I would say. What is the most that have you made from one of your films? The most, probably about 100,000 from a single project. And it might be a little more than that because it's a really old title. In the last few years, the most I've made in a year has been about 40,000 in a year. So yeah, there you go. Nothing huge. Like I said, the biggest budget movie that I ever directed was a thing called, oh God, they changed the title. What was it called? The Sin Choice, or A Sin Choice. It was called 40 to Life originally. And it was basically a vanity project for the producer, but I directed it. It was about a $250,000 budget, I think. And other than that, I think A Hard Place is probably my biggest budget, and that was about 150, maybe 160 all in. Craving was around 100 all in. And I've done several others like between 50 and 100, and then, quite a few much lower than that. Do you continue marketing your films through time? That's how you can. Yeah, I do. But a lot of times, like older stuff, because like I said, I have 80 titles in my library, so I don't always get to everyone every month. And sometimes just like weird timing, a title will pop back up. I produced a dog rescue documentary back in 2019, and it did decent, like its first like 3 months. I think it made around like $6,000, something like that. And then it basically fell off. It was one of those that was making $4 or $5 a month, and then like out of nowhere 6 months ago, no promotion, nothing, it popped up to $1,000 that month on Amazon, and it just did. So I think it's advantageous to continue to promote. It's just as you add more titles, you have to, temper, how much that is, or, spread it out over your library. So like these days, as far as promotion goes, I put most of my effort into, my narratives. And like I said, I only do one every other year or a year and a half, so, like I just have a crap ton of marketing material for them. Like when we did Craving, we had like over 2 terabytes of behind the scenes footage. I mean, the movie came out February last year, and I'm still, I still haven't ran out of material. I mean, I'm down to the bottom barrel of it, but I still have material, so I keep on pushing it. And then like the docs, like I said, they kind of, I don't promote them as hard, but I do promote them. I have Facebook groups and stuff that I go in, specific ones for those. I promote them on my Instagram some, and stuff like that. Sorry. Waffle Iron Maiden again. Where are you promoting your films? Personal social media channels, paid Google ads, etc. So for the most part, I do a lot of it on my personal. So especially for the narrative stuff I'm talking about, because one thing about marketing that I really wish people would wrap their head around a little more. It's not, when you're marketing a film, you're not just marketing that film. You're marketing yourself and you as a brand. Or if you're not, you should be, especially if you want to make this a career. So I do a lot of my bigger projects. I spend a lot of time talking about those projects and building interaction with them on my personal pages. But some of the best, most interaction that I get though, and I do a lot of my promotion on Facebook, and I'm not saying like Facebook's the best social media platform. It's just what I have the most experience with. I'm good with it. I'm comfortable with it, and I tend to get the most interaction there. So, like I like with documentaries, for example, I have several Bigfoot documentaries. So when I first started making those, I started going into Facebook groups and joining a bunch of Bigfoot groups. And I started, participating in the community, not just, posting about my movie, but, like posting a comment, replying to other people's comments. And I know it sounds like, oh my God, you must live on social media, but it doesn't have to be. Like, there are days when I'll spend almost an entire day promoting on social media, but for the most part, if you would average it out, I don't spend any more than, like a total of like 30 minutes online a day, if that. Sometimes more, but for the most part, less than that. So I do run Facebook ads a lot, again on Facebook. I usually start my paid ads very low, as low as you can, like $1 a day, until I get to a point where that ad is delivering at a fairly low click through, like, getting down to, like a cent a click or less, or 2 cents a click. And then I'll put a little bit more into it, but I don't spend a ton of money on that. I have about a $200 a month base amount that I spend, and most of that is for my library stuff. So I'll have I don't know, I have to count them up, like 20 paid ads, right? And those are all running at $1 a day. And I'm sorry, not 20, 10, sorry. And those are all running, at $1 a day. And then every month I change what movie those ads are. So if 1 month it'll be my first 10 movies, second month it'll be my second 10, and so on and so forth. And then I'll spend a little bit more on the newer releases. So for a doc, if it's a brand new doc and I think it has some legs, I'll put that out. I'll start it at $1 a day, but then I might take it up as high as $5 a day if that click-through rate's high enough. And that's about where I max out on paid ads, no more than $5 a day. So at a max on a single movie, I'm going to be spending 5 by 30. So $150 on, a single title, now in addition to that, I might do I don't know, like a banner ad on a horror site or something like that, or a press release through a PR company, some stuff like that. But for the most part, the bulk of my marketing is organic on social media, backed up with a little bit of paid ads and some third-party stuff. How much, Conrad Craven, how much of your production budget should you save for marketing? Do you suggest hiring a PR firm for a couple of months? So one thing that I want to make clear before I get into answering this about movies and the types of movies I'm making, there are so many different levels of movies and types of movies and types of filmmakers and ways to distribute a movie that, like saying a general rule of thumb, what you'll hear online a bunch is you should have like, what is it, 50% of your budget for marketing or 30% or something like that. And, like that's like Hollywood standard or, something like that. But if you are making a $10,000 movie, $5,000 for marketing is ridiculous. Half of that is ridiculous at that level, because $5,000 isn't going to move the needle enough on a $10,000 movie to make that kind of investment worth it in general. On small stuff, and by small stuff I mean anything like maybe as high as $100,000 under. I personally wouldn't put back more than 10 or 15%, like tops, and even then I would probably just try to put the money on the screen and then figure out how to get a little bit of money for marketing afterwards. It's just a different game, and another thing on paid marketing, especially on small films, it's different when you get into a higher budget range. If you have $500,000 to spend on marketing, that's a different story. But if you only have a few $1,000s to spend on marketing, it's never really going to be a direct like ROI. Like I spend this much money, I get this much money back. You have to look at paid marketing for smaller films, less about your ROI, and it's more about building momentum. You're trying to get your film noticed, because like the thing is like everything's all about algorithms these days. And like if your movie's on, say, Tubi has an algorithm, and it needs to decide who to show that movie to, what types of people are watching your movie. And if you do like a small paid ad, targeting the correct audience, like the right age range, the right, financial demographic, the right interests, and that ad shows and the ad gets showed to enough people in the right demographic that watch your movie, Tubi is going to say, hey, fucking, like 150 people, in this demographic just watch this movie, show it to more like them. It's about building momentum. And again, this is just my opinion. There's a lot of PR people that depend on like, the money from filmmakers. So they will argue this and they'll tell you I'm full of shit. And maybe I am, but in my experience, like that's the way marketing works for small films, All right, what's this? Can you talk about indie rights versus Film Hub? Is one better for a certain type of film? Is one better for foreign distribution? To be honest, it depends so much on the movie and the circumstances. Indie rights is probably my favorite like traditional distributor that I've worked with, and I love Film Hub too. So I really don't want to publicly say this one's better than that one. Indie rights will work with you a little bit more. They will help get your film to possibly some bigger platforms. They do some marketing. They're easier to get a hold of and return your calls quicker, for sure. So yeah, I recommend having, especially if you're making, like smaller movies. Like I don't think indie rights even takes movies like with budgets much over like say 2 million, maybe less, I'm not sure. But like if you have a small movie, they're one of the best distributors around. They're great to work with. And one of the main reasons that I diversify and I use a lot of Film Hub, one, indie rights doesn't take everything. And, I do a lot of very niche documentaries. For example, the documentary that I just was talking about earlier that did so well on Film Hub that made, 20 grand in the first 3 months. And I don't think indie rights would have took that movie. It was very niche. 70% of it was actually me on camera talking about Bigfoot, over B-roll and then other interviews spaced out. But I mean, it's something that a lot of people would tell you, hey, this is good for YouTube and that's about it. But they'd be wrong, because it made, it made 20 grand on Amazon TVOD, so whatever. But back to my point. I can't really say overall one's better than the other. It depends on your project. I like them both. And, I love you too. That was quick. All right. So on your digital marketing campaigns, which social media, which social media platforms is more fruitful, and what's your conversion rate as far as sales conversions? So I don't know if you were here for my little diatribe about ROI on small movies, but I pretty much don't believe in ROI on small movies. It's more about building momentum. That said, I usually don't run an ad if its click through is, over say 3 cents. And as far as conversion rate, I honestly could not tell you, because all I'm really looking for is the click through to build momentum. Now I'm having. Oh, there we go. Jardo, the video about your Bigfoot documentary was especially inspiring. I actually watched it without knowing it was yours. I saw a lot of Bigfoot. Oh, cool, man. That's really good to hear. I got it. You'll have to message me or whatever and tell me what you really thought about it. It's one of those things, I am not a huge Bigfoot guy. I'm really interested in the people. Like the people that are into it, which is pretty much, you could say that for all the documentary topics I do. I'm a lot more interested in the people than I am necessarily the subjects. And I made that movie, I said it in the documentary, in the video, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I spent less than a week making that. I shot my portion of it in a day, edited my portion in a day, edited the B-roll and music in like a day and a half, and then like deliverables in a day, and there's some that would say, you're just throwing like crap at the wall, but it's not totally true. I mean, I did do it in a very condensed amount of time, and again, not to sound like an egomaniac or something, but I've been editing and like doing high speed editing for 20 years. I mean, I used to work at Fox Digital for a few years, and I was doing promos, like trailers for like their independent streaming platforms. It was when like streaming was new. I mean, I would have to cut like full on 30 to 60-second trailers in less than a day. Like done, polished out, and then, and the other thing in just independent film in general, man, especially if it's about, or not about, but if, making money is one of the things you're moving towards, the time you put in has to be at a certain point, equal to the money you're going to get back. So like when I'm doing one of these like really small like documentaries like Bigfoot Beyond the Legend, chances are, and I didn't expect that movie to make more than a few $100s a month. So I got to be like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 days, or let's say I was going to attack it like a regular documentary. I'm going to spend 2 months and make this immaculate. Is a $200 a day return on 2 months of work, that doesn't make any sense. So I have to, do those faster in order to make them profitable. And it just so happens, from my experience, that I can do that at a quality level that I'm okay with. Now, when it comes to narratives, that's kind of a different story, because I've built this floor of documentaries that pretty much are how I make my living. And then, I can do a narrative or two, a year, every other year, and I can spend more time and I can put more care into those. I think I spent 6 months editing Craving. I think something like that, and it'll be a similar time frame for, Hard Place when all's said and done. I had interest from Cutaway Entertainment. No, I don't. To be real honest, and give me 1 second. I've been talking so much. I do not know Cut Entertainment. I've never heard of them, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, to tell you the truth, in the last few years, because my documentary distribution is so kind of specific. Between Indie Rights and Film Hub, I don't have much need to go outside of that, and they're both super trustworthy. And I know that what money is earned, they're going to make. And honestly, like I said, a lot of them are very niche, so I don't go much outside. That said, I'm just starting to look at distribution on a hard place, which it's a little bit bigger than my typical thing, and I'm looking at other options. So like I'll have probably more to say about other distributors in the next 6 months, but right now, honestly, I've had experience with maybe 12 different distributors over my career, and out of those 12, probably 6 are still operating. You mentioned once that you had made 5 to 6 micro budget films. It becomes hard to make the jump to and you said either step it up by then or do something else. Still true. Interesting. This is a really good question. So I do believe, when I was being hired to make direct micro budget films, like I did 10 or 12 for a company called AMG Film Partners, and this was between like 2010 and 2014, something like that. And my goal at that time was to be a studio director. Like I wanted to be Quentin Tarantino, or like around 2014, I think it was, like, I had a couple of scripts that I was trying to get going at a higher budget level, and like in the millions. And I had my pitch deck. I had actors attached to one at one point, like notable actors. I had a movie with like Ving Rhames and Michael Madsen when he had, not that he's not a great actor now, but when he had more value. And I forget who else, but like it had attachments, and I got really close to the funding like 2 or 3 times, and nobody ever said, you've directed so many of these little movies, we don't think you could do that. But reading between the lines, man, I did get that impression. I did. And so I kind of operated with that as, I'm never going to do it. But what happened between then and now is like that's not my goal anymore. Like I'm happy like where I'm at. I'd like to have a little bit more money to make my movies. Like I did Hard Place for 150. It really needed closer to 500. But I would have been like a pig in slop with 500,000. But that said, I don't quite believe this anymore, because what I've discovered is filmmaking is film business. It's more about the business. And if you can show profit on a bunch of smaller films, and whatever bigger film you're pitching fits the business plan for this new company, then you can still get in there. Like, my next film, which I can't really talk about yet, but I'm working with, it's a different level of movie than what I've been doing, at least budget wise, so it's one of them things. I don't think there's a set way. I think for some filmmakers, what you're saying or what I said is true. I think for others, it's not true. I think it just depends on the person and the filmmaking. And honestly, I would rather do movies at the level that I'm doing them for the rest of my life and never get any higher than not make any movies at all, or sit around and wait for that bigger opportunity. But that said, are the little ones necessarily going to lead you to the bigger one? Probably not. It's all going to be dependent on that individual project and timing. Hope that made some kind of sense. Is crowdfunding a good way to build? Absolutely. So yeah, I'm glad somebody asked about crowdfunding. So my introduction to crowdfunding was back in 2017. I was getting ready to do a movie called The Campus, and I was considering crowdfunding for it. So I was at the time I was the co-owner of a animation company. We had an angel investor, and like it was paying pretty good. And so there was a guy at the time named Justin, well, at the time still, named Justin Giddings, the Kickstarter guy. And he was running a full bore, like crowdfunding, like crash course. And it was like, I think it was like $2,000 at the time. And I talked to the investor. I said, hey, I think I could do this. And he paid for the course. So I took the course. And now, long story short, I ended up not crowdfunding that movie because we found some traditional investors right after that, and it just kind of rolled from there. I've done videos on that movie. It was a big mess, but anyway, but the education that I got from that crowdfunding course, the implications were reached so much further than crowdfunding, because crowdfunding at its core, it is marketing. You're trying to get people to go to a site and spend money, right? Like no different than trying to drive traffic to Amazon or anything like that. Except here you're giving something more, or that is potentially worth more to the person than just watching the movie. But it's just marketing 101. It honestly, like that course was like the cornerstone of my to this day, my marketing techniques. I mean, a lot of it's changed and evolved, and I've added on stuff. But like, if you go and look at, like, I have a 30-minute marketing video somewhere on my channel, like, what I do on projects. And I'd say like 20-30% of that is almost directly out of that crowdfunding course. So yeah. And then on top of that, if you are genuine and you're delivering on your promises and you're interacting with the people, you're absolutely building an audience. I've made lifelong friends, from doing these last two crowdfunders. I've made, and have amassed, a good amount of people that are following my, especially progress through the narratives. So like, when I announce a new narrative, if I decided to crowdfund a movie tomorrow, I could probably raise 20 or 30,000 on the first day, and that's off the base of the people that I've either donated before or that have been following me. And I could also launch one tomorrow and it might make $20. You never know. But yeah, I do think that crowdfunding is a great way to build an audience, if you can do it. All right. Let's see. Ron Boy says, hello from Illinois. Hey, I'm from Indiana originally. Appreciate your show. Is linear right? Thanks, Jay. Thank you. Do you recommend using an OTT platform to sell your films? I don't think it hurts. It's not something that I do very much. I find it very, very hard to drive traffic to anywhere that's not Amazon or, like Best Buy or, Apple TV or whatever it is. I personally find it very hard. And there are people that do it and do well with it. I personally just don't. Doesn't mean it's not valid. It's just not a way it's just not how I operate typically. What does zero marketing cap mean for the filmmaker? Zero marketing cap. From a distributor. If they have no marketing cap, it means that they can spend as much money as they want on your film and never pay you any money. If there is, or if they have, no marketing budget at all, they're not going to charge you for that. But anyway, I would never sign a distribution agreement with a zero marketing cap, as chances are that is just, it's legally used to make it so that you'll never earn any money. Because they can always claim the movie's in the red, They've always spent more on marketing or distribution. To tell you the truth, my second movie, Edges of Darkness, was released through a sales agent, Shoreline Entertainment, and they put it out through Anchor Bay in the US. And they had a pretty big release. This was back in 2008. So it was physical media. It was in Blockbuster Video. It was on Hollywood Video. And, it was a small little $25,000 zombie movie. And it had like 12 copies stacked deep, at Blockbuster for rental, and I mean, if you remember Blockbuster in those days, like small movies, have 1 or 2 copies maybe. But anyway, so it got a really big release. And in the first, I think it was the first quarter, so the first 90 days, the movie had returned over $95,000. Like, that was what it was showing as earnings. Producers, we saw not a dime of that. You know why? Because we had a zero marketing cap, and they claimed expenses and marketing, and they charged us thousands of dollars for the film festivals. Like it was crazy. I finally, like, I think, and it was a 7 years license, so it was like, I think it was 6 years into that license before I actually started seeing any money from that movie. And it was small. We're talking like, maybe $1,000 a quarter or something for like a year, and then never heard from them again until the license expired. And then no, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to speak out of school. Are you going a different route for a hard place? What's the plan? Honestly, right now, I do not know. It's going to depend on a few things. There's a few things in motion, and depending on how those things work out, I will make that call. So at this point, I don't know. Okay. Is there any way to post a video? Any way to post a video for you here on YouTube? I have a ton of questions. Not that I know of. You seem to be saying that you make your money off your documentaries and the other narrative stuff not so much. Is that right, or am I not hearing you right? No, I make the bulk of my steady income. Like I have a floor of income that I can expect from the documentaries. But when I say that, I'm also mixing in the 10 or 12, older narratives that I have in the library. So that, like, it's all mixed in. But I do kind of look at the documentaries as my day job, and then like the narratives as something I do more as a passion project. And some do well, some not so much. I did a video on the campus. That was a huge, financial loser for me. Craving did okay. I expect A Hard Place to do very well. So yeah, I would say probably, I mean, if I've never really done the math, but documentaries probably make up 70-80% of my income, but they also make up about 70% of my film library. I mean, I think I've directed 22, 23 narrative features, but of those, I own the rights to 10 or 12, something like that. So, numbers wise, no, but yeah, so it's a mix, but the documentary is probably a little more so. Do your narratives make a profit, or do you make most of your own? I was just talking about that, but yeah, I make most of my profit from docs, but some of the narratives do very well. It just depends. And I have much fewer narratives in my library. Is it still relevant to film proofs for the feature in today's market? So it's not relevant for me or for the level of movie I'm making. So here's the thing. Like, I am making really, even narratively, I'm making pretty small movies. Like 150 might sound like a lot of money, but that's money that I raised, through crowdfunding and through, a little bit of traditional investment. But I didn't create. Well, I guess you could consider the pitch video for crowdfunding a proof of concept, maybe. But as far as a traditional proof of concept, I honestly haven't done one in over 10 years. But if I was if I was soliciting someone to make, you know, a $10 million movie, then yeah, I probably would do it. But to be honest, because I'm not doing that level of movie, I honestly don't know if they're relevant, you know, because of how I raise my money or fund stuff myself. So Ty Banks Film says, what do you think about making a series or collection of 20-minute shorts for a YouTube channel and submitting it as a series to Film Hub? So I don't want to poo-poo the idea. I just want to say it's not really, it hasn't, I don't have much experience with it, and I probably personally wouldn't mess with it too much myself. That doesn't mean it's, you know, not a viable option. You know, there's people doing it. I don't know a ton of people that are making, you know, a decent amount of money off, you know, series content. There are some, you know, some really, you know, notable exceptions that are making a ton. But generally, at least in my experience, I've had much more luck with, you know, more narrative length things. But that, again, that's just me. Getting releases are a given, but what about permits? Do you get permits for every location? So I'll be honest, no, I don't. You should, you absolutely should, but I don't always. You know, and it depends on the project. When we did Craving, our main location, we pretty much we had to get permitted, but you know, we did several days on that, you know, outside of that main shoot where we weren't permitted at all. We were shooting in a friend's house, but you know, in LA, even if you're shooting inside a private residence, you're still supposed to have a permit, but we didn't. And then on A Hard Place, we were shooting in Ohio, and we were on private property, and again, we didn't permit for that. So not always. All right. It's mad interesting. Oh, thank you. All right. Oh, hey, Cody, how's it going, dude? I'm hoping to ramp up my own features here next 2 years. Do you have a set of hard deadlines for your movies to release? Not a hard one, but I do, especially if you want to keep going and build some momentum. Ooh. All right. Looks like I lost it for a second, but I'm back. Okay. Do this. Okay. So my feeling on this is I feel like if you do not set a deadline or some type of hard deadline for yourself, that you can work on a thing forever. I think one of my attributes, or you know, superpowers, if you will, is I know when to move on from a thing. You know, when I've got it about as good as I'm going to be able to get it, and be okay with it, or when that thing is good enough for its intended release, you know, if you will. But regardless of that, good enough, bad enough, if you don't set some kind of deadlines for yourself, as a, like, if you're an entrepreneur or filmmaker, you're doing your own thing, you know, you can work on it forever. You could, I mean, I could literally, I mean, I could have done another 6 months on Craving, easy. You know, maybe it would have been better, maybe it wouldn't, maybe it'd be different, maybe it wouldn't. But like at a certain point, you know, like you get through it and you move on to the next thing. You know, in my opinion, if you want to make it from your movies, you have to. I hate to sound like it's a numbers game, but it is kind of a numbers game. Like you have to amass, you know, what, like one movie isn't going to do it for you. And I think that's another thing that a lot of indie filmmakers like trip up a little bit, you know. And I'm not saying to not shoot for the stars and not make it the best you can. You do all of that, but you know, just ratio wise, movies that are out and movies earning, movies not earning, most independent films, regardless of how good they are, they're not going to make a ton of money. Like they just won't. You could spend another like year on the thing, it could be freaking immaculate, and you might have missed your window. You know, I have some friends that just spent, you know, over a year on the film festival circuit, and they have a very good movie. In my opinion, that year window, like it was a lot of it was wasted. Like they spent all this time marketing and pushing the movie and getting people on their social media excited for it for the film fest. And now we're getting ready for release. Is it? And I could be wrong there, but I think for the most part, you have to follow through within a time frame. Dominique St. Clair. I don't really want to use investors for my films because I don't want to have that responsibility. So I'd rather self-finance or crowdfund. Yeah, honestly, that's the reason that I turned to crowdfunding initially for the narratives. So like on docs, I make them like basically for nothing. Like we might pay a few $100, for an interview here or there. But for the most part, like, we have the gear, shoot the thing, edit the thing, put it out, no money. But for narratives, and if you're making them cheap enough, like if I was making narratives for, I don't know, 20,000 or under, I might be a little more confident to take money traditionally. But where I like to make narratives now, like, and it has nothing to do with like I just want to make big movies. I want to be able to pay crew. I want to have a certain scale of movie. I want to have a certain comfort level shooting the movie. So like I don't like to do anything less than 100 myself, but that's just me. What was I? Oh yeah. So crowdfunding basically, it eliminates the need for, the returning the traditional investment, so like on Craving, for example, we took out between 20 and 30 in traditional investment, but that movie easily made that, so like I was able to return that money, within the first year. Now, if that movie had been traditionally funded, like the full 100,000, it hasn't made that much. So, it would have been a financial loser. A Hard Place, I honestly have no idea. At this point, I think it will do better than that, but I don't know. So yeah, I think that's a great way. Is a 50-50 revenue share a good sign that a sales agent has belief in the film? Man. So this is just my take on sales agents. And again, this is just for me, is there's different levels of films. If you're making a, $500,000 movie and, it needs to have, a bigger distribution, sales agent can be a way to go for that. For anything less than $100,000, I would not mess with a sales agent personally, because the sales agent's taking a cut and then the distributor's taking a cut and then you're getting a cut. And 50-50 does not sound like a good revenue split to me from anyone. I personally, in distribution, I wouldn't give anyone more than 30%, unless they were doing something like bringing something major to the table. Like this distributor was going to get you, a signed deal with Hulu where you were going to make, $25,000, or I'm sorry, $100,000 in the first quarter or something like that. Other than that, I wouldn't. Although again, my experience has mostly been on the $100,000 and under level. So if your budget's higher than that, I don't really know. But in general, I don't mess with them. Just wanted to throw this up for Cody. There's no permits required in Idaho. I definitely gonna have to go film a movie out there. Is horror really the hottest category now? I asked because I work in comedy. I'm wondering if I should move over because I'm a trans woman and everybody is terrified by us anyway. Not everyone. So no, horror is not the hottest category. I make horror movies, and a lot of people see me as a horror director because my last 3 were monster movies. But as a narrative film director, I've done comedies, I've done religious movies, I've done dramas, I've done children's movies, all kinds of different things. And I would say generally on low budget stuff, like horror is not. It's actually probably one of the rougher ones to make a good profit right now with, unless you're super cheap, like, backyard filmmaking, like, a couple thousand, or much higher with name talent. It can be really tough. I actually believe, or shoot, I have a friend who's making really low budget comedies right now, like super low budget. They're doing like PG-13-esque, like raunchy, like teen comedies, and like doing really well with them, and super low budget, and there's in the African American market, shoot, like Lifetime type thrillers, but with mostly black casts. Those are doing killer. Like a couple of the people that I mentioned earlier that were making like 100K a month or 100K a quarter, they're black filmmakers, So yeah, I would actually say horror is probably not the most financially stable genre. There's just a lot of people making them, but I see a comment down a little lower. It's fun to make. Like that is why I like doing horror. Like horror is fun. And I like the elevated stakes of horror. I like the life or death stuff. So like that's why I like horror. But no, if comedy is your thing, do comedy, even if it's not, the most, marketable genre. Because I was talking about the Bigfoot thing earlier. The one of the main reasons I think that resonates with people and it did well is because it was genuine. Like it was genuine. I had a genuine interest in those people, so, and I think that translates, and if you're, making films as a cash grab, I think that shows too. And I think you're less likely to succeed if you're not passionate about it. What would you say is a good length for an ultra low budget narrative film, 10K or less? It could be anywhere from, they can be as low as 45 minutes. Like I think when you're streaming through, like say FilmHub, like Tubi and Amazon, I think they pretty much, that's their cutoff for features is 45. And of course they can go up to whatever. I personally like to keep them right around 90 minutes. But I think as long as it's in the public conscious, I think as long as it's over, say 70 minutes, most people won't bat an eye at it. And actually, like, streaming distribution has kind of changed the way people even think about features anymore. There's a guy in my Facebook group, Matt Skinner, one of the greatest independent film fans of all time, and he loves short movies. Like if the movie's 50 minutes, he is in. If if it's 48, even better. Like he loves those and consumes them like crazy. Me personally, and maybe it's just like a weird, like older filmmaker thing, but like it feels like anything under 80 minutes is not really a feature. But that's honestly kind of a stupid ego thing. I think if it's under 10K, you can make it as low as 50 minutes on the docs, for example. And I call those features. But I have a minimum of like 48 minutes is as low as I'll go. And I always try to go a little over 50. And, I'd say the average is probably between 65 and 75 minutes for those. That's a really good idea. Yeah. Horror is fun. What do you think of festivals? I decided with my film not to submit to festivals and go to streaming ASAP based on my experience with the documentary I produced. So this is just my take on it. Do not take this as the ultimate say so on film festivals, but I am not a big fan of them. And honestly, it might even be out of a little ignorance. I've never really done film festivals, so they might be great, but I don't know of, I can't think of any like indie filmmakers that I know, like personally, that other than what you might read about in Hollywood Reporter or some crap. But those are all lottery ticket winners anyway. But for the most part, I don't know anybody who found a distribution deal or it like boosted their sales in any dramatic way. You know what? I take that back. I do know a filmmaker that did Fantasia Fest 2 or 3 years ago, and they landed a really nice deal with Netflix, which led to more streaming deals, and they made pretty good money on their movie. So it does happen. But in general, especially for really low budget stuff, I personally think it's nothing more than, ego, boosting, or if you're doing it to network, I do think that there's some value there. But for me, I really don't mess with them. Oh yeah, another part to that. Long story short, process takes so long. Film Hub, that will my premiere. Oh, I mean, who knows? I mean, Film Hub could, I've had movies go live there quickly, like, in like 3-4 weeks or less. And I've had others take 3 months. And I think recently, it's been taken like 2 months average. But it depends on the title too. If you have a really like market friendly title, sometimes those get out really quick. How are the sports documentaries going? Man, I wish they were going better, to be honest. Those were some of my, I'm out of a lot of the docs I've done in the last couple of years, I'm kind of the most proud of those. I love the fighting ones, and I really like the women's wrestling one, and they have all of them have kind of underperformed. I think at best a couple hundred a month. So it's kind of disappointing, but yeah, mine didn't do so well. It doesn't mean that others won't, but mine didn't. Can you do a certain genre with a recognizable face and sell international to certain countries with a huge population? So again, man, you're kind of talking about a slightly higher level of movie than what I'm doing now. So, and distribution, especially on the lower level, has changed a lot in the last 15 years. So like when I was directing movies for AMG Film Partners, that was absolutely their model. They were hiring, like 2 or 3 names. They would have them in for a couple of days. And by names, like we're talking about people like Robin Givens and Richard Roundtree and Peter DeLuise, Eric Roberts, Corey Feldman was in one. And yeah, they would sell huge foreign territories. My understanding, and this is just my understanding, I'm not saying this is absolutely how it is, but that market, especially for smaller films, has really taken a hit foreign over the last few years. So unless you're talking about like a couple of steps up, like you're doing a $250,000 movie and you hire somebody like say Casper Van Dien, but you're not going to get Casper Van Dien on a $20,000 movie or whatever it is. That would make a difference, or it might. I'm sure it would, but at the level I'm making them, not really. Jay Trinidad. By the way, guys, I really want to appreciate all the questions. I usually don't get so many, so this was really cool. I had a kind of I thought I was going to have to riff for an hour, but it's been nice. Anyway, do you have some simple tips on your budgeting scheduling process? How do you spread your money so thin for your docs and features? Do you use deferment for your cast and crew? So I'm going to talk about the narratives because really my docs, I make them so untraditionally. There is no crew. Like sometimes I'll work with shooters in other states, but I usually don't pay them up front. They'll make a percent of the back end, and typically on documentaries, I approach them as kind of a journalistic approach. And I typically do not pay for interviews because I don't want to influence the interview. That said, I have a few times, but for the most part, I don't. And I am the editor. I am the colorist. I use my music library to score them. So they literally cost me nothing. So that doesn't really count. So as far as narratives though, jeez, I keep losing connection. Weird. As far as narratives, I wouldn't say any simple like budgeting tips, and honestly, I don't like to talk a lot about the nuts and bolts filmmaking process. I tend to concentrate a little bit more on the like business side of things. But what I will say in general for your budgets is, keep them absolutely as low as possible because the market is tough for everything. Whether it's a doc, whether it's a narrative, whether it's a horror, whether it's a comedy, it is tough. Don't make it for a dime more than you have to. One of the biggest mistakes I made on a movie called The Campus, I've done videos on it here. I talk about it quite a bit. I have to stop crapping on that movie. But that was one of the major errors. Like I was originally going to shoot it for like 25,000, and I was looking for that 25,000, and it just wasn't coming in, and I was ended up going to have to borrow it from friends or something. But we set our dates, and then like 2 weeks before the movie came in, because we were looking, from different places, the money started coming in, and it came in from not one, not two, but three different places. Now, what I should have done was take one, turn down the others, make the movie. But I was like, oh, we can make more money. We can shoot longer. So I made it a 25-day shoot, and it was anyway, it was a recipe for financial disaster. I shouldn't have taken the extra money. So that's my budgeting tip. As far as I usually do not do deferments for cast and crew. I try to pay them right up front. Although that said, on both Craving and A Hard Place, I did have producers that came in and worked for deferred payments. Although at least in the case of Craving, because it's been out for a year, they've been fully paid off. In A Hard Place, I 99% sure they will. All right. So Jason says, I love film festivals. My short film got distribution through Bloody. Cool. See, it does happen. And again, I have absolutely no experience with short films. I've done a few, but I've never even tried to do distribution. So that's great. Awesome. Would it be acceptable to pay? What would it be acceptable to pay a micro budget film actors at a 10,000 budget? So, guys, this is just my point of view. I'm not telling anybody what they should or shouldn't pay people. I personally don't believe in paying less than what that state's minimum wage is. And I, you could get into the weeds about the legalities of it. I don't. I just, as a producer, if it's a paid job, not a crowdfunded job, or not someone who came in to volunteer or something like that, but it's a paid gig. It should be state minimum wage. So whatever that state minimum wage is, times 12 if you're doing 12-hour days, in my opinion. And that's another reason why I don't like making, narratives under, say, $20,000, because I look at crew the exact same way. And, once you, even on a small film, once you add, like 5 actors at that for 5 days, and, a DP, an AC, a gaffer, sound guy, makeup, blah, 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 blah. You're just on like your cast and crew costs, on a regular movie, you're over 20 grand, So anyway, that's me. That's how I make them now. Although, back in the day, when I made quite a few narratives for, say, 5 or 10,000. But this was also 20 years ago. I was paying, like $50 to $100 a day for people, but I've always pretty much as a producer paid. The only exceptions would be if I was doing a crowdfunding movie. And just for those specific roles that were crowdfunded. So Nick asks, is it more difficult to market your titles with indie rights versus Film Hub because of the delayed reporting? It's nice to. So no, not for me anyway. I really don't look at I don't get me wrong. I do look at the reports and I do, adjust some strategies over time. But as far as I want to see, it's making more money on Amazon, so I'm going to push more people there. And I have not found that information very helpful, to be honest, over time. And I've done it a long time. I don't have any better luck, marketing and pushing my titles through Film Hub than I did, from titles through Indie Rights or other traditional distributors. And again, and this is just me, but in general, I don't believe too strongly in marketing strongly towards single platforms either. You know what? I take that back. I do that. Forget that. Forget I said that. But no, the answer is no. I honestly don't think that information helps that much, and I don't think most filmmakers even would know what to do with the information anyway. And like I was talking earlier about paid ads and ROI on the paid ads, and how on smaller films that's kind of a misnomer and kind of silly anyway. Like you're trying to build momentum in the film more than get a direct ROI from your marketing spend. Now, by effect, if you're doing it effectively, it will work, but it's not necessarily a one-to-one ROI. Oh, finally, a hard-hitting question. Boom. All right. What does that shirt say? Yeah. It's Punk Rock Possum, Gas Money Pictures. It was designed after the oh my God, what was the name of the bar in LA? It was a big bar. Anyway, yeah, it was I used to run Gas Money Pictures, and we developed a ton of animation, and this was one of the animation shows. I just always liked the title. Do you ever get burnt out? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So and it is different times and in different ways. So back in 2018, I had a pretty bad experience on a shoot. It was a long shoot. I think we shot campus for like 25 days or something like that. And I was working a day editing gig while we were shooting it, because the editing gig, it paid too good to turn down. And it was supposed to happen in May, but then they pushed it to April. So I had to do the editing gig at the same time. So I was editing from like 9 a.m. to like 5 or 6 p.m. And then I was shooting the movie 7 to 7, at least 5 days a week. And, I was completely burned out. I was going to retire from movies after that. But, I got a second wind and some other stuff and come back. Now I don't get burned out in the same way. Like, Hard Place was a physically challenging production. And it was super cold, and we honestly didn't have enough money, and it was a chaotic set, so it was like mentally taxing, and so I was a little burned out after that, but just in kind of a I just had like this really intense short period of time. So I took I think a 5-day vacation after that around my birthday, and then I'm doing another 5 days in Cancun in November, and those little resets help me a ton. But like as far as like the docs and stuff, like they really don't stress me out at all, so I don't mind them. And because I do so many projects, and all my eggs aren't in any one basket, like I don't have a huge emotional attachment to something if it doesn't do well, so I just move to the next, and that kind of helps me. And honestly, as far as burnout goes, I was burned out doing this stuff like a year and a half ago, because I'd done it. I started the YouTube channel doing the filmmaking stuff hardcore in 2019, and I did 3 like 5 to 10 minute videos a week, plus interviews, plus like a monthly live stream, and I got really burned out on that. Like I felt like I just didn't have anything else to say. I was tired of answering the same questions, and and I've taken almost a year. This is my first live stream I've done in a year, so yeah, I do get burned out. All right, let's see. Oh, Cody, for someone relatively new, not me, definitely not you. What skills or crafts are the most important to develop and make your movies and keep the budgets as low as they can? That's a really good question. Man, I'd love to give you a really good answer, but that's something I gotta have to think about for a minute. So one of the So I'd say one of the biggest things is like knowing when to ask for help, not taking on too much yourself, you know, but being able to do enough yourself that you can keep your budget low enough. Like I personally don't think it's too much to direct and edit, you know, and if you can do both of those things, it takes a huge amount off your budget. So I do think some multitasking is necessary, especially on super low budgets. You know, being able to trust the people that you're working with. Um, but yeah, the time management. I mean, time management is huge. So you know, and especially as an entrepreneur, that is a really like hard thing because you have nobody lording over you. You know, like my last two movies, like if I decided that I wanted to take, you know, 8 months or a year to work them through post, I could, you know, but you know, I set limits for myself. So I'm like, you know, the one I'm working on now, you know, there's a I know I said I just didn't like film fest, but there's a film fest that I wanted to submit to that's, you know, that's gonna be in mid-July. So, you know, I set some hard deadlines with, you know, my composer and my VFX guys so I could get at least something out to them by that deadline, you know, and then even if it wasn't for that, my hard deadline for the movie was like August 1. And that was just because honestly, it was going to take me, you know, like 3 to 4 months to do the, you know, creative editing part. And that was all that I felt I needed. So, and then move on to the next thing. I did a feature documentary on on a historical monastery, 89 minutes long, 20 years ago. Project is 43SD. Do you think? Yes, I absolutely do. And there's so 43 stuff. They still broadcast it. Although what I might do, and you know, I haven't seen your documentary, so I wouldn't know. And depending on like the resolution, do you still have the original tapes? I had a couple of because I shot SD features from 2000, my first one all the way to I think I stopped, moved to HD in 2010. So you know, I have 5 or 6 features that were SD that I have upped resed to HD and re-released. Now you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to, because you know it also, you know, it involves some recropping sometimes, you know, if you want to fill the sides, like stuff like that. But you know, with programs today like Neat Video, you can like clean those up reses up really nice. Anyway, whether you want to do that or not, you can absolutely release the 4.3, and I would do it sooner than later. It's really not hard to deliver to someplace like FilmHub. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve if you're new to it, but I mean, it's basically just going to a website, uploading a file, typing in your metadata, you know, and make sure you have your closed caption. The art is probably the most difficult thing because they ask for 6 different sizes. You know, you might, if you're not a graphic artist, you might have to have someone do that for you, but it's pretty cool. If you couldn't do it yourself, how would you pay for key art? I would just pay for it. No, not to be glib. And I don't do all of mine myself. I do some of it myself. But yeah, I pay for key art often. So like when I say the docs, like I don't spend any money, it's not entirely true. Like I may spend some money on key art. You know, and anywhere from, you know, I've had them posters done as low as $50 on Fiverr, you know, up to $500 and $1,000. Just depends on the artist and the thing. But I am fair to middling, you know, as a graphic designer. And, you know, sometimes like I'll just like I'll one will just hit me and I'll just, you know, I'll have a good one. I mean, one of my most successful oh shit, I was getting ready to say that was my, no, it's not my poster. I was getting ready to say one of my most successful ones was my poster, but I don't know if that's true. Oh, yeah, it is true. A different movie. I did one called I Want to Believe. It was a UFO documentary, and it was 100% my poster, and it was a really high earner. I don't think it's necessarily the best poster in the world, but it represented the movie, and it did well. But yeah, if I wasn't, when I don't do it myself, I hire, and I do believe in hiring out for things that you can't do, you know, or that you're not great at. You know, like for example, I'm a pretty good sound mixer. I mean, a sound designer. Like I can design the sound. But like when it comes to mixing, I mean, I'm okay. I can do a good stereo mix. I can do a passable 5:1 mix, but it's not my cup of tea. And if I can get the money in the budget, I'll hire somebody to do that. Yeah, from my experience, short films are great for festivals. I don't have any experience with features yet, so it'd be less worth it. Festivals have. Yeah, totally. And I think even with features, they talk a lot about length and trying to still keep it like kind of short, so they can film more features. They're less likely to select a film if it's like over 2 hours than say 90 to 75 minutes. At least that's what I've heard. How do you feel about distributors putting films on YouTube, and should filmmakers build their own YouTube channels and put those films up there? Couldn't we just use FilmHub and keep the rights? So yeah, I do have a little bit to say about distribution on YouTube. I don't have a problem with distributors putting my films on YouTube. The thing about YouTube and it's hard for people to wrap their heads around this, but it is true. Like the cross collateralization, like say it's on multiple channels, isn't going to affect you that much. Like there's something like, oh man, I forget how many people. There's something like 2 billion users or something like that, or some ungodly number of users on YouTube, And so if you have a film and it's on, your channel, it's on some other distributor's channel, it's not necessarily going to hurt it. I mean, I have titles that are up on my channel that have a few 100,000 views that they've earned me $5,000 or $10,000, and they've earned similar money on a distributor's website or another website that I've licensed to. So there's that. I do think there's some value in filmmakers building their own channels, but only if you're actually going to do that and work at it. So like I have a monetized channel now, but I worked my butt off. Like I mentioned earlier, I did 3 videos, 5 to 10 minute videos a week for 3 years, and it took, I think it took me 1.5 years to get to my initial monetization. And then, it took me another maybe 6 months before it was any kind of noticeable income, so it's like building a YouTube channel. I mean, you can get lucky. You might have one title that just takes you off or something, and you get lucky and make a bunch of money, and then it's cool. But for the most part, it is a long uphill slog to build a monetized YouTube channel and make some money off of it. So I personally don't see a problem in, like FilmHub throwing stuff up on Stash TV or licensing it to other channels. And then, I can put it up on mine as well because it's a non-exclusive deal. Now, if you're with, say, if you're with a distributor, a lot of times your deal is exclusive. So you won't be able to put it up on your own channel. You pretty much just get their channels unless you carve out those rights. But personally, if I was like a starting filmmaker, I had, just 2 or 3 movies, 1, 2 or 3 movies. And I had the choice of giving it to a distributor or FilmHub to put on YouTube or putting it on my own non-monetized YouTube channel. I would go with the short-term money. And then, and then if I could put it up on my channel as well, that's probably what I would do. Hi, Jay. Recently, Mark Duplass mentioned that the new indie film front is indie television. If you can make a pilot or a reasonable smart witty dialogue based on any thoughts. I mean, I totally love his take on independent stuff. And there's so many different levels of independent stuff. He is even on an independent level, he's in a whole other category, so it's working totally different for him than, say somebody, never done a Hollywood movie working out of, Georgia now, making super low budget stuff. It's different things. So I personally have had absolutely no luck with, television or shorter form content myself. It does not mean that others haven't or that it's not a thing. I don't see it. And I think this actually brings up another point that I've been thinking about a lot. And it's about the different levels of independent filmmaking. People say, I'm an independent filmmaker, but like, what does that mean? You know, like first off, like what budget are you working at? You know, does independent film, you know, 'cause, I mean, technically, The Phantom Menace was independently produced. You know, technically that was a 200 or $300 million whatever, but whatever the budget was, independent film, you know. And that, but so can that be called an independent film in the same way that, you know, somebody who makes a movie in their backyard for $2,000 or $3,000 is that an independent film? Well, they both are. So like, you know what I mean? So like the Duplass thing, he's working in a completely different playground than what we are, you know, or what I assume we are. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. You know, but so it's like listening to what like known like directors or producers say. I'm not saying that it's not true or that it's not right. It's totally right for what they are doing or what, you know, where they are. It's not necessarily true for us. That's just my take. But that said, I do think doing something minimum locations, minimal cast, witty dialogue, that is smart. Yes. Do you use AI for anything like promo art, stills, videos, or writing? Any thoughts or worries about the future of filmmaking? Okay, so I'll talk about this a little bit. So I think that we're in this really cool like bubble right now with AI where you can use it as, you know, like tools for certain things. You know, for example, I do use AI for promo art. Like not necessarily the poster itself, but I will do, you know, like I'm getting ready to mount a bigger level production with some other producers, and I'm trying to communicate my vision to them. And you know, like honestly, I don't have the money for a sketch or a still artist, so like I will go on AI and I will type in some prompts to figure out what I want these certain creatures to look like, and I will use that, you know. And on Hard Place, a lot of the elements in our posters were AI. You know, we didn't necessarily just like type in a prompt and throw a font over it, but you know, like we would create like, you know, like silhouettes of characters standing in the foreground, and then we would take them out and put them, you know, against an explosion, and like some of those elements would be AI. And I mean, I think that's, you know, people talk about it like, you know, taking jobs, and on a bigger level, that's true. But like, I'm not somebody who can afford or ever was hiring people to do these things. Like my posters just weren't as good back then, you know, 5 years ago before, you know, the AI elements, you know. So like, it's not at least on my production, it's not taking a job. So that I think is kind of okay. But where I worry is I just was messing around on a website called like NVIDIA, and they're creating and they're still pretty short, but like you can type in some prompts and you know, like upload a sample of your voice, and they will edit like a passable thing, like short, like documentary style thing with like voiceover and created B-roll. And I mean, and we're just at the beginnings of it, you know. So who knows how long it's going to take before we can actually just type in prompts and make full movies. And when you can do that, you know, that's scary. That's scary. And to be honest, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that right now, as far as making movies, pedals to the metal. I'm going to do as many as I can in you know, before anything else major happens with that, you know. Well, and also as I get older. But that's my 2 cents on AI. Would you release a full movie on YouTube or break it into smaller episodes? So I would do the full movie. I'm not big on compartmentalizing material on YouTube. I experimented with it some with my documentaries where I would, because a lot of them have really good out of context bits, and I would put the short ones up, but I have almost always myself done better with longer form things. They can fit more commercials, more people watch them. I've just had better luck with it myself. All right, so I think that is it for our questions. All right, guys. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm trying to think, was there anything I also wanted to talk about I got off on? If anybody has any last minute comments, I am going to be wrapping up pretty soon. Would you remake one of your older scripts now that you're in a position to have more creative freedom, even better equipment and crew? Probably not. I have a friend that I've known for like since college, and he always like, yeah, well, almost every movie he's like, oh yeah, a couple of years, man, you remake this at a bigger budget. I don't see it. I mean, if an opportunity presented itself, I might go for it. But to be honest, I'm kind of like, shoot something and I'm done with it. I would like, and I have so many unfilmed scripts, that I'd like to shoot. So I'd say probably not. Probably not. Oh, here's a good one. Are indie movies even profitable in 2024 since it's so saturated now? Yes, they are, or they can be. Here's the thing, guys, and this has always been like this. Like, it's always been hard to profit off independent films. It always has been. We have these narratives that have been, shoved down our throat since, the early 90s when when the big independent film explosion happened, Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez. And the thing is, man, I mean, I'm not taking nothing away from those guys. They're all brilliant, great filmmakers, deserve it all. They're also lucky. It happened, it's lottery odds, and those odds are always there. Now, yes, there are more people making them now. It is harder to make, especially on smaller stuff. It's really harder to make the same amount of money that we were 10 years ago. So, like when I was doing the movies for AMG Film Partners back in like 2010, like it was no thing for, or not unusual for an independent film to be, budgeted at 20,000 and make over 100. It didn't always happen, but it wasn't unusual. Like these days, it's unusual. Like it happens, but it's unusual. It's definitely not the average. The averages are much lower. But on the other hand, it's so much easier to actually like make a movie and get it into the market. So you can't. I mean, I made over six figures off of very small movies this year. So it is, and I am not, a world-class director. I'm just a dude from Indiana, made some movies. But so yes, you can still make them. And the reason that I wanted to jump on this question too, so it's like a lot of people use that as an excuse not to try. And it's like, if you don't try, you definitely won't, or if you go into it with a completely like sour, like this isn't going to make no money anyway attitude, it probably won't. Did that one. Oh, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. We shot green screen comedies and I put in an AI background, but as a former copyright lawyer, I think I was going to destroy copyright, so it's a bad thing. Yeah, I don't know. How heavily should you rely on Facebook groups that cater to Tubi fans, especially if the promotional but is very limited? Depends on the title and the Tubi group. So there's a couple of Tubi groups that are like very, very heavy on like African American content. and I'm as pale white as you get. And I have marketed in those groups, and I don't get the same kind of traction that those movies do there. There are some horror Tubi groups that I've done pretty good in. So yeah, and I do think it's smart to like niche down, in the types of groups that you're promoting in. For example, if you have a horror movie, it used to be horror groups were a good place to promote. These days, it's kind of tough. Like you have to be really clever about it. The posts have to be really good, and the movie has to be really good, or at least have really catchy art. It's so yeah. But so I wouldn't rely on it super heavy, but I definitely think it's something you should exploit, the Tubi groups. No, not at all. I'm actually enjoying this. I may have missed this, but would you suggest to make a 62-minute documentary, or do we need to get above 72? Yeah, I did talk about this earlier, but I'll answer it real quick. Yeah, you can keep it at 62. For streaming distribution, it really doesn't matter. Kevin Smith is pretty lucky. He must have eat a whole keep making his movie everything but tusk. Well, I mean, that's definitely it depends on who you talk to. I'm personally not a huge fan of him as a filmmaker, as a filmmaking, as a film watcher. After his like 2 or 3 in the 90s that I really liked, and I did like Red State quite a bit, but neither here nor there. He's a very smart film entrepreneur, and and I absolutely love his take on the film business, and his podcast is just brilliant. Anyway, what software did you use for your live stream? Oh, this is StreamYard, which I always love StreamYard, but I'm actually having some issues with it with Facebook, because Facebook's made it to where you can't stream in groups anymore, and I had a lot of trouble even setting up this stream, although I hadn't done one in a while, so that could be a little bit to it. Thank you. And thank you. Wait, here's one. Okay, I'll take a few more. For first-time crowdfunding, is it realistic to expect the goal to be met? I guess it depends on your goal. It's one of the most important things to having a successful crowdfunder is setting a realistic goal. So it goes kind of against common sense, but you kind of figure out what you need, and your goal should be about half that. And then you get to your goal by stretching, which some people say, well, that sounds dishonest. But if you don't make that stretch goal, you can always refund the money if you can't get enough to make the movie. But crowdfunding is all about momentum, and it's a lot about early momentum. And the sooner that you can make your initial goal, or get as close to it as possible, the more momentum that campaign is going to have. A lot of people think crowdfunding is like underdog status is going to help you. We're the underdogs. No, people in general, and it's just sales psychology. People want to be a part of the thing that's definitely happening. They want to be a part of the thing that's doing well. And even if you have a little tiny budget, say you were trying to crowdfund $2,000, and you set that as a goal, and then on the first day you raise, let's say, 1,000. So you make posts like, hey, day 1, we hit 50% of our goal, blah, 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 balloons and, fire rockets and fireworks. and that momentum helps, on both A Hard Place and Craving. We made our goals pretty fast, within the first week. And, on both of them, I'm trying to remember, I think Craving, the initial goal was 20,000, maybe. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 10, but it was something low. And I knew that I needed a minimum of 50, but I also knew that if I could raise 10, I could traditionally raise more. So I went for the 10. And then I think on A Hard Place, our initial goal was 20, but I knew it had to be much higher, but we made that 20 in the first week, and that momentum, bam, 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 bam. So You gotta, especially on your first crowdfunder, like a lot that you raise is going to be like money that you kind of have not direct connection to, but like money that you think you could raise. Like you're not going to get all this incidental traffic, at least not initially. Like you have to, they say if you're not at like 30% of your goal in the first like 2 or 3 days, you're kind of dead in the water. So like you have to get so if you look at how much you're going to ask for by how much you think you can raise. So if you think you could personally right now, if you went on Facebook and started, messaging individual friends and family, and you're saying, I think I could come up with $300. So $300 is like, 30% of 900. We'll just round it up to 1,000. So like 1,000 would be your initial goal, and that would be realistic. All right, guys. So I believe that is it. So I am going to call this a day. Actually, it's longer than I usually go. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Glad for all the questions, and whatever you do, keep making movies.